Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shakoor Anjawani. I'm a member of the Co-op Development Institute's staff.
Lynn Benander, also with Cooperative Development Institute.
So we're in day 2 of our trainings on group-based business development. Today we wanted to talk about a little bit more about group-based business planning. Giving an overview, talking about group participation, and begin to talk and do some role plays on some particular projects that we think might be of some interest. And then, in order to give you a good sense of how we take a client through a business planning, a participative business planning process, so that we can come out with a plan that brings everyone together in a joint vision, a common vision. And is based on serious business savvy with all the kinds of right things being done in terms of feasibilities and other things. So everyone has their packets.
They're coming.
Yeah. Okay.
Couple
if
missing.
you don't, yeah, a couple of you missing that they're coming. One of the things that we're going to be going to first is the.
Actually, we're going to do this first,
yeah,
which
first,
they don't have.
Yeah, we'll be working out of the Knotbox PowerPoint first and give a little bit more discussion about what a group-based business process looks like.
So these are actually the handout that I told you weren't going to use that starts with Knotbox. We are going to actually start right there in the middle because there are a few slides that we didn't get to yesterday. And just some basic definitions that if you're starting a group-based business, you have to figure out who's owning it. And you can have consumers owning it, producers or farmers owning it, workers owning it. Businesses can own these group-based businesses, municipalities and other government entities, other group-based businesses, and combinations of more than one group. So can you give me an example of a consumer-owned group-based business? A business that's owned by consumers. Many.
Like a grocery?
Okay, a co-op grocery.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think of a business that's not a cooperative that's owned by a lot of consumers?
Maybe they have shares in the corporation?
Yes, there's some housing entities that aren't cooperatives but have multiple, like condominium associations, homeowner associations. Lots of examples. How about producers and farmers? Producers or farmers. So someone who's manufacturing something that's engaged with this business as someone producing something. Have you ever heard of any kind of businesses that are owned by a group of farmers before?
Farmers markets, CSAs, and also these partnerships.
Yeah, those CSAs are probably a combination of, well, actually the farmer's really owning it, but there's a big consumer participation in that business structure. You think of any other producers? In New York, there was a cooperative of photographers who put up all their photographs together. There are all kinds of artists, businesses, both cooperatives and non-cooperative structures, non-profit structures. Worker-owned businesses can either, you can have workers who actually are in a cooperative where their employee stock ownership plans, and there's, I'm sure we could come up with lots of examples. How about group-based businesses that are owned by other businesses or other organizations?
Like a community land trust that's owned by a nonprofit.
Well, who are the owners of that community land trust?
Oh, well, the members of the nonprofit.
Probably those residences. So I'm looking for a business where the members are businesses.
Oh, okay. Oh, like buying cooperatives,
The Federal Home Loan Bank.
there you
Was that?
Federal Home Loan Bank. I actually don't know enough about them to know whether that's true.
They're a bank for banks, basically. So there are 12 members across the country,
Okay.
and they're each member is a bank in and of itself.
And they own that. I was thinking it was a federal entity. It
No,
wasn't.
it's like a quasi.
Okay. Great. Ace Hardware stores.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dunkin' Donuts.
There are a lot of purchasing cooperatives,
True
the
value.
funeral homes that form a purchasing cooperative so they can stay in business. So, how about municipalities and other government entities? Can you think of any examples of those? In where I live in Western Massachusetts, we have a municipal transportation authority, which is a cooperative of different towns who want to do transportation together. We also have a waste recycling waste removal program, and there are many towns that are forming economic development cooperatives because none of them can pull together the resources to fight a lot of development pressure that has a lot of dollars and a lot of lawyers and a lot of accountants working full-time. The towns by themselves can't really defend themselves against that development pressure, but if you get 10 towns together, then you can have a full-time economic development person in place that's bringing in those kinds of resources and talents.
Some states now are looking at prescription cooperative. I think Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire combining together to be able to drive down prescription costs for their Medicare populations through a cooperative buying process of prescription drugs.
And then you can have, well, this is a subset of the business and organizations, but you can have group-based businesses that own. So there's food cooperatives in the Northeast. All are a part of the Cooperative Grocers Association in the Northeast, and then they're a part of, all these regionals are a part of the National Cooperative Grocers Association. And it's the only reason that we have a chance of keeping food cooperatives competitive in the natural food industry with so much competition, is because they're looking at ways to buy together. They're looking at a label that they might be able to put together, like you can get ShopRite peas. Well, you might be able to get food co-op, peas at some point or another. So there's these ways of forming cooperative groupings that will allow the kinds of businesses that we're helping to start to be able to compete with all the consolidation that's going on in every industry sector. And the activities, and the reason I'm going through this is as Shakoor and I work with groups, being able to get really clear about who the membership base is. Most of the time when groups come, they're not really sure if workers are going to be owners, if the people in the community are going to be owners, if there are other businesses that are going to be owners. They haven't thought it all through. So for you to bring that clarity of who it is that's going to be involved, what role they're going to play, and what they're going to do. So these are the basic activities that all these co-ops do, is they purchase things, they process things, they market things, and they provide jobs. So helping the groups that you're working with really get clear about what of those things are we going to do. Are we going to just sell wholesale and let somebody else do the retail marketing? Or are we going to actually have a whole retail marketing component to what we're doing? Are we going to provide jobs as an employer, or are these workers going to have an ownership stake in the business that we're developing? And we talked about some of these yesterday, but there's key advantages to these locally owned businesses. One is that they do exist to meet their members' needs, so they're really focused on that. And they can do a better job at that than for-profit businesses sometimes, often. They have a chance at that. When they're locally controlled, they can increase the money, keep money staying in the community, and return profits back to members. And there's also a lot of research that shows that cooperatives have an advantage in the marketplace, that consumers think that cooperatives are more trustworthy, that they have higher quality products and services, that they offer lower costs. So there's a market advantage if you're a cooperative. That's one of the things to look at, but there's also a lot of disadvantages.
Yeah, and part of that is we did a role play yesterday, and and talked and went through a scenario where everybody was not united on whether or not cooperatives are the best thing. It doesn't help us if we treat cooperatives or group-based business as some kind of religion. I mean, we need to flow first from what are the needs of that particular community we're targeting, and then figuring out how they want to, what kind of activities, and then from that figure out what's the best business structure that would best serve those needs. And so our approach has to be based on understanding that, like, not only are there advantages, but there are some disadvantages too. The access to capital could be more difficult, particularly depending on what type of group-based business it is. The cost of member and public education is going to be greater. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more effort. We talked a lot yesterday about how the long-term payout of that will also be greater. But you need to know up front that it's going to that more time and effort is going to be required of everybody involved, and so all need to be a part of that. The cost of participatory decision making, not easy. Sometimes, depending on the experience and the social capital of the group, it might require a lot of effort to get folks up to it, or not. I mean, so you have to assess that, and then that, as I said, the businesses are only good as members ask them to be. I mean, so the question of how determined and strong a membership base all has to be factored in. So these are some of the things that we need to be able to take a sober look at and be able to assist folks in taking a sober look at it.
I had a question about where advocacy comes into these primary activities, sort of looking outside of the co-op and being able to place it in like a political context, or if there needs to be some sort of organizing outside of does that go under marketing, or is that something that the board does on its own?
There's the activities, the primary activities are activities I think of as the revenue producing activities. This is how this business is going to sustain itself in the world. There are other things it's going to do, public relations, communications, personnel relations. It's going to it'll engage in a huge amount of things.
Something
But if you don't know how revenue is going to come into the business and whether that revenue will pay for the expenses, the conversation's over. So that's just how we were thinking about that. The other thing I just want to add on to what Shakoor was saying is that when a group comes in and says, we want to start a cooperative, we've got this great idea and we want to go and we want to start a cooperatively owned print shop. The first thing I say is, fantastic. Let's see if that's the right thing. I don't know whether a cooperative, even if you're going to start a print shop, I don't know if a cooperative is the right thing for you to do. And so helping them to back up so that the conclusion they come to is research-based. It's based on what the market is, how much it's going to cost in capital, and whether they can secure it. You got to do the research, and then you know whether you're going to start a cooperative or any other kind of group-based business. Maybe what you want to do is find somebody in the community that's already doing it to expand, and you're just going to go under their ownership structure that they've already got. It depends on what I ask people to back all the way up. Is like, what's most important to you? Is it starting a print shop cooperative, or is it getting a job? Is it providing some service to the community? But I ask people, it's like, why are you interested in that? So I want to back people up as far as I can, ask them why, until I feel like I got to the bottom of what it is that's motivating them, what brought them in my door, and then see, well, what is the best way to address that purpose? Is it, what are all our options? So if you want a job, you could go out and get one. You could help start a new business. Starting a new business isn't the fastest way to get a job. So, just backing people all the way up so that that at the end, what happens when I think when we respond to whatever people's first idea is, we end up with, at the end, people go, oh, it's going to take me $100,000 to get into this business. Well, maybe that's not really what I wanted to do anyway. You know, and you end up in that place a lot more often. So if you start at the beginning and do the due diligence to really figure out what's underlying and what's the best way to get there. I think that's, you want to go through this?
No.
In your packet, you'll see there's just a summary of what the development opportunities are in agriculture, with credit unions, with utility cooperatives. We've just kind of given you a summary of the state of the cooperative industry in each of those areas: food cooperatives and buying clubs, purchasing cooperatives, daycare, healthcare, worker-owner, housing, and then we talked about this other stuff before. So you can see that in your packet, but we're going to move on to something else at the moment. We'll do business planning. So in your packet, about midway through, there's something called the business plan overview. And how many of you have taken a project all the way through a business planning process? Anybody? You have. Got it? So, yes. Yeah, it's that 2-column paper. Did you all find it?
Yes.
And again, this is a handout that we use with people to give them an idea of what's involved and why we might want to do it. So the business planning process we haven't all found it yet. The business planning process includes a feasibility study that compares different alternative ways of solving the problem that people have come in with, and a business plan where people agree how they're going to launch their new business. And it's really an opportunity for going in depth and researching: is there a market? Is there a good product? Is there the technology we need to provide this product? Really looking at the operations, the expenses, the income, and really seeing whether or not this can possibly make sense, and if it does, how you're going to do it.
Like I said, why we need to do it, it's all important. I mean, if not having a good plan will pretty much doom you to failure. I mean, if we don't, and it sets up a good business plan, gives you the roadmap, it unites everyone behind us. It brings everybody up to speed in terms of the business process, and the kind of business plan, a participatory business planning process. You know, if we do it well, we can deal with all types of income levels and education levels and experience levels, and we can use that as a way to be able to bring folks where the champions and the experts in the room will at least share some common knowledge with the folks that might have just came in the door and said, you know, I just want a healthy community, and I'm not quite sure how to get it. This sounds interesting, you know, and let's work together on it. You know, so it brings a way to bring them all together on what the opportunities are and what the mission and the vision and the concrete steps. It gives us a way to really thoroughly understand the challenges. Like as Lynn said, I mean, a lot of times folks will come with a very general idea. They'll say, okay, we want to do urban agriculture. And they read somewhere about a group that young people that formed a worker co-op, and they produce salad dressing or hot sauce or something. And, you know, so why can't we do that in our community? Great, you know, not bad. You know, we love it. It's good that folks are thinking that way. But then, you know, given them to a point of understanding, okay, what are the steps that we're going to have to do? I mean, what's the competition in this market here? I mean, is there real possibilities for this particular product in this market? And then what do we need to, do we have the various skill sets, in-house to develop this product, or are the experts that we need to provide those skills, are they within easy reach? So beginning to have that conversation, beginning to organize folks so that we can all begin to talk about those things and consider it and develop a common sense of it is particularly important. And go on.
I think about the business planning process, especially when you're doing the business plan, as your simulation of the business. Mm-hmm. It's like you're doing it on paper, and you're watching, okay, these are all the places we're going to be selling our product to, and you list them all. This is our primary market for that. And how much money are they going to give us? Okay, let's see, in month 1, it's going to be this month, and you're simulating the whole thing, and then you go by, and okay, now we're manufacturing. Who do we need on staff? Let's see, I think we're going to need 4 people. No, we're going to need 30 people. No, we're going to need 100, whatever it is. And okay, if we're paying them all, boy, in September, we're going to have a payroll of this amount. Oh, that's a little sobering. Okay, but it's a simulation. For me, this document that we produce for the business plan isn't something that's like goes on a shelf somewhere. It's our chance to learn what would happen if we were actually running this business. And I haven't ever gone through a business planning process where we didn't learn like 300%. We might have thought we knew how to run that business when we started the business plan, but we learned so much about, oh my goodness, if we really follow up with this heating oil market, that income only is going to come in from November until March. And then it's going to get warm, and they're not going to need the heating oil, and they're not going to be, people aren't going to be burning it. And look what happens to our financials come August. Oh my God, we better develop this product for a different market. So the business planning process to me is this incredibly fun, alive learning process. And when people start, if the business planners are working with you and they know when they're coming to a juncture, they say, oh, I've got to make a decision about whether to, estimate this or this. And you bring that back to the group, and you let the group really educate themselves enough so that they can actually engage in the conversation and then make a decision at each of those critical junctures along the business planning process. That group knows the business by the time you're done. They own the business and they own the plan. You don't have to have a decision on, shall we accept the plan, yes or no? It's like, what happens when you vote no? You read it 2 days ago for the first time. You vote to accept it. You don't have any stake in it at all. But if you've been through 8 different meetings where you were discussing the core premises and assumptions that are built into that plan, and you believe in them, you think really, 800 people from this community really would shop at that store. You saw all the surveys that were done. You saw where their other options are, and you believe that. So the estimates make sense to you.
And then if we're going to go out and talk to lenders and investors, you got to have a business plan in your pocket to talk to them, and so to prove that this is a sound and worthy investment. So being able to have that document, and then having gone through that process, then folks can be able to go in, and whether they're dealing with government or bankers or venture capital or whatever, then it shows that the work has been done, the thinking has been done, the research has been done, and so this is not just a passionate idea, but a sound idea, that's worthy of support. So,
Okay.
On purpose, like I said again, creating that shared understanding, developing the launch strategy and operational plan, and also them looking for the strength of it. Also is not only this is what the situation is today, but as best as we can tell, this is what the situation will be 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years down the road. And and particularly, there's a lot of things that we may be, if we're talking heating oil or biodiesel or wind energy or food, there's a lot of different things that can happen in 1, 3, 5 years that we need to do some planning on it, so that we can hopefully be prepared for trends that may be going in our direction in a favorable way or going against us, you know, so, and having a strategy that we all commonly agree with on what we're going to do, either one of them.
And I think I've been a part of business development efforts that didn't do planning. You know, we didn't have any money. We had a bunch of volunteers, and people were willing to put sweat equity in, and they just got started and tried to make it work. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. But a lot of times people get really frustrated. And it goes on for a long time, and it kind of saps people and exhausts them because there's not enough. I had a group of farmers develop a really great feasibility study and then a business plan for a marketing cooperative for what they were producing. And it required the farmers in the co-op to each put in $1,500 to capitalize it. And they decided, you know, we don't really need to do that. Let's just start it ourselves. We'll manage this cooperative. And it showed that they were going to actually make a lot more money over time. And I'm not going to tell you who they are just because it didn't work very well. And so they decided, even with the business plan, they were going to do it themselves. So they weren't going to follow the business plan, but they were going to follow their original business idea. And the whole thing, it limped along. They signed on. A quarter of the members they were supposed to sign on. There was nobody doing the marketing. They were all kind of trying to do it for each other. And the whole thing died and sapped a tremendous amount of energy out of the entire group. And the group doesn't think co-ops really work very well. I was ready to kill them. But they had such a great plan, and it was really a great market opportunity that they had identified, and they'd figured out why. So even when you go through all this stuff, it doesn't always work. I'm involved in another business startup where you know, there's a bunch of people that think this is a really great idea, and we're just pitching in and we're trying to make it happen. We've been trying to make it happen for about 2 years. You know, I should probably know better. But there isn't money, and it's a really good thing, and I think it's really going to be great when it works. But, you know, so it's not to say this is the Bible, but it's to say if you're serious about something and you want to make a real difference in the world, this is the way to do it. If you can't get enough money to do the business planning process, there probably isn't enough money and interest to really get over the hump of making it work. The other thing I wanted to say about why do business planning is, you know, I said that you bring those critical junctures back to the group and get them to engage and make decisions. If that group hasn't made 8 really hard decisions before they go into business together, they're not going to be able to make the decisions well when they're really under a lot of pressure. You know, this is like practice for the group, too, in running how to run that business. So it's fun. I'm so excited when we're in the business planning process and the person doing the financial analysis or the business planners comes up with one of those key questions. They're like, don't go any farther. We got to wait. We got to get the group together to really, you know, participate. And they say, oh, well, the decision's a little bit obvious. I think we could just assume. I said, no. This group needs this. You know, it's part of your contract. I said, you got to identify 6 things for the group, key decisions for the group to participate in. So they go, okay, we'll do that.
You know, so who should be involved in the business planning process? Yeah, our approach is we like to bring as many folk in the process as possible. I mean, some folks do, you know, they'll bring in 2 or 3 or 4 of the key leaders and, you know, and the experts, and they'll grind it out, and then, like I said, then come to the meeting and say, here it is, you know, and then they're shocked at the blowback that they might get, you know, or either first they get a weak support and then people half-heartedly implement it, or they might get an ugly fight right from the beginning instead of you know, if there hasn't been a process in it. So we think bringing in everybody that we possibly can, the potential owner members, the community leaders with special skills or experience, you know, consultants, you know, not only, you know, the business planning experience and startup experience, but like I said, but the folks that really understand this industry. I mean, more and more, the need to have a real deep and understanding of the industry and the technology you need and other things that are becoming more and more essential, particularly you know, when you're trying to find that particular niche that you're going to fill, that has real growth possibilities. And so we really need to understand it and not try to, find out too much in the end. And then also the lawyers and the accountants to give you the legal and structure kind of stuff and the financial stuff. So, but trying to bring them all, that doesn't mean they're all in the room necessarily at one time, but that they're that they're participating in that process, and then hopefully folks and the community leaders and the consultants, others that have some good facilitation skills to help them work through those decision points, just and grow and get stronger from that process, and instead of being weakened by that process.
And there's a difference if you're going to be creating a 3-person worker-owned print shop or a consumer-owned grocery store, about how many people you're going to have at the table. If you're going to have 3 people on staff and you've already got the 3 people here, you don't need to go out and find more. And there might not be that many community leaders, maybe just a couple who are interested in supporting these young people, in the community getting something started. So it's all scalable on the project.
Typical startup mistakes that the business planning often, particularly in the kind of community that we want to deal with, there's not a tremendous experience and skill sets and working as members of boards. So giving them putting them in a process where they can develop shared vision and where they can develop what's the key issue right now that we need to deal with at this point? Is it structure? Is it bylaws? Is it financials? Is it is it greater understanding of the industry? Being able to make decisions about that and get something done on it. So it helps to strengthen that board and to even out the experience and development there. Management, again, I mean, it helps to develop and strengthen that management so that they understand, like I said, as Lynn said, they've kind of worked out in a practice. It's like a video game, where we've kind of worked out how that war is going to be fought, and so we're going to, begin to see what some of the pitfalls and potholes are going to be in front of us, and already have worked out what we're going to do when that comes in front of us.
Maybe we just need a new name for business planning.
Yeah, no, I think because part of it is
people go,
boring, scary. I mean, but like I said, but if
another study, didn't you just do one?
And then particularly when you come in from the academia, they'll figure out, oh, they're coming with it, study us again. No, this one is if it's a process that we're coming to some shared vision, it's all important. And then on these financials, deciding at what scale you want to function. I mean, I was working with one group, and they was talking 10, 15, 20, staff folk, and that would be generating in this cooperative. Once we did the financials, 3 to 5 began to make more sense, for the first 2 to 3 years or so. I mean, so really beginning to work those things out and going from just the dream to what is really feasible and what really makes sense. And then giving you a mechanism to really build that community support and member support, depending on how broad you need to build it. It gives you a lot of the kind of talking points that you'll need to go out and show folks that this is not no lightweight idea, that that this is based on some serious business savvy, some serious research, and some serious planning, and sometimes we need that to be able to be respected by the right kind of players, because for all the different reasons, whether race, class, gender, or whatever, in terms of the communities that we seek to empower and build.
The next thing we're going to do is give you a chance to be consultants working through the strategic planning process. So we don't need that now. Yeah. And we have 3 choices of groups, projects for you to work on. And we're going to divide up. I think we'll pick 2 of these. So, and one of you will go with Shakoor and one will go with me. And the first is a group of 20 farmers want to start a plant that will make something from lavender that they're growing. Right now, there's not an easy market for them to sell to, and a few are making sachets and bunches and selling them locally. But most of them don't want to have to do all that themselves, and they'd like the co-op to do all the processing and marketing and sales for them. That's one. 2 is a nonprofit with 1,000 household members wants to use their purchasing power to generate funds to support local organizing and education efforts. That's option number 2. And option number 3 is a labor union local is interested in securing low-cost energy for their members. Members reported in a recent survey that the high cost of energy is one of their top concerns. So which of those 3?
Two out of the 3.
Raise your hand if you're interested in this 20 farmers growing lavender.
Okay.
Raise your hand if you're interested in the nonprofit with 1,000 household members.
Okay.
Got 3 for that one. And raise your hand if you're interested in the labor union local.
Can you read that one again?
A labor union local is interested in securing low-cost energy for their members. They're interested in being more relevant to their members, and they want to be looking at what their members need and addressing that. And so they did a survey and found out that the high cost of energy is one of the things that's of most concern to them. So. Okay, so let's try that. How many people would be interested in the labor union project? Just one. How many? Yeah. That or the farming one? Okay, let's go down this way. You're interested in the nonprofit, right? Number 2. How about you? Are you joining a group? Nonprofit? How about you?
For the farming one, the lavender one.
The lavender, okay. Okay.
A nonprofit.
Okay.
Nonprofit.
Okay. Okay.
Farming.
All right.
Well,
2 is the nonprofit. The farming. All right. So we've got. And do you want to take a group out, or you want to stay here? And which one do you want to be? We're going to be the clients, by the way. And your job is to go through the first few pages of the packet from yesterday, taking your client through the strategic planning process, agreeing on roles and responsibilities, and creating a development plan.
Would it be difficult if we just both sides? Yeah. Yeah. Why don't we?
are they going to film this?
They're going to film one of the groups.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking they'll film the one that stays in, and then the other one, maybe they can go out to that other table.
Let's take the nonprofit out.
Okay.
No, the nonprofit should stay.
The nonprofit's going to stay in, I think.
So which one do you want to take?
How about if I take this out?
Okay.
You want to stay here and do that one?
You can go to my office.
You can come get me if you need help with the client.
Okay.
Okay, so nonprofits here, and if you could move somewhere nearby this microphone, that would be good. And to get started, the nonprofit consulting team here, you might want to pick someone who's just going to kind of chair and keep things going.
Yeah.
It's just, you want to do the union thing instead? You know, I was thinking about that so much already. Yeah. It sounded just like Wyatt.
It was. I meant to meet with him in Pennsylvania.
so-
Yeah.
This is at 5. Okay. Maybe why don't we? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll come over. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
So you're the client.
I'm the client.
Start by telling us about yourself.
Okay.
Certainly.
So,
me
why don't,
and the other farmers I work with, we've been
who's gonna be
growing
your lead?
lavender for about
Okay. Yep. Okay. So I'm the client. You're the consultants brought in. We're talking about how can
The client being a community member who's interested in.
I'm the head of a group that with 1,000 household members, and basically I'm in we've been doing community organizing in our community. We're in a neighborhood that is mixed, fairly diverse, but it's going through a lot of traumas. Gentrification and other things are happening, and we're trying to. It's getting harder and harder for us to raise money. All the different sources, the foundations, the federal, state, and local government is getting more and more difficult to raise money with. And at the board level, we had some discussion, and we thought about what about developing some business activities that would not only create some jobs and opportunity and provide a very important service or product to our community, but that also that it would raise enough money so that we could be able to actually funnel back some of it into doing some organizing and some education, so we wouldn't have to be running around chasing after dollars as much. So we're looking at some sustainable kinds of community organizing efforts. But we haven't figured it out. We don't know what, I'm not quite sure how we could do this. We've talked about some issues and concerns we're concerned about high heating costs. We're concerned, about energy costs on a number of different fronts: conservation, education, efficiency, to looking at some alternative energy possible solutions. Our members are running have problems with high cable and telephone costs, and we've heard that there might be some possibilities there. We've there's some vacant land issues, and so we've thought about urban agriculture, but we don't know. We're not sure. So we wanted to come to sit down with a group of experts like yourself to be able to give us a sense of what should we do next.
Well, I'm curious about what kind of organization we're dealing with.
It's a CDC, and we have 1,000 members, and it's a moderate-sized community, and so we're we have some potentials for growth, but at this point we've been kind of settling at the 1,000 member level for the last few years or so.
And you do housing and all kinds of.
Yes, we've been primarily doing housing development, but we're also looking to add some things to our portfolio. So we're open to other possibilities.
And so you have been able to convene some focus groups among your members about things that they'd be interested in purchasing collectively?
We had we did a survey. We started a process from our last annual meeting, and we began to survey our members in terms of what their key issues that were, and energy costs and telecom costs, healthcare costs were some of the high priorities, and then the problems of creating career opportunities decent career opportunities for young people in our community. The things were all in that top 5.
Is there have you been able to assemble a large enough group of people who are kind of driving some sort of agenda at this point?
Yeah, we have a committee of about 20 to 25 folks that are meeting on a regular basis since the annual meeting, and we're looking they're kind of raring to go, but they're not sure what to go on, where to go, where to go to.
So you have 1,000 members. You say, like, what is the role of those 1,000 members? Like, how do they interact with the CDC, and what are they? How involved are they? In what way?
We're like most CDCs. Most of the members are not that involved. They come to annual meetings. They participate in some conferences and other things. But generally, we have a kind of a working group of 30 to 50 that that we can kind of depend on, depending on the issue. But one of the things that we're trying to do with this is a way to strengthen the membership, bring more folks into leadership, get more people actively involved beyond just sending in some dues money or attending an annual meeting.
Is that your primary goal with the project?
We have kind of two goals. That we want to better serve the needs and increase the commitment and participation. But also, so again, we want to be able to try to diversify that funding stream, so we can be able to have some dependable money that we don't have to worry about who's in the White House on what's going to happen the next day.
Do you have forms of generating capital to get it off the ground you think the group's capable of? Is there interest are people going to want to put money in, do you think, off of that? Is there?
We're not sure. Like a lot of CDCs, a lot of our stuff has been grant-based, and we haven't called on them to have to come up with much in the way of funds to support the organization. So that's membership and other things that really makes up a small percentage of our revenue. So this would be somewhat of an experiment for us to jump out and see beyond what people said in the survey. Will they really put their money where their mouth is?
Well, it sounds like your group, if you've got these 20 to 25 people already on board for the idea, at least, it sounds like the next step would be to try to drop a business plan.
Business plan? What is that?
Well, I think that part of that would be going through a visioning session and bringing, maybe we would feel more comfortable if more people were at the table to understand.
What do you mean by more people? I mean, what would, should I just bring the key board members or the entire committee that's interested in it?
Right. Well, at least starting with the 20 to 25 committee members would be helpful in just sort of pinning down maybe like 5 different options of what type of business. And then encouraging them to spread through their networks what the plan is on the table, sort of the gist, so that we're not continually moving forward without a larger sense of what's going on in other people's worlds.
Possibly those 20-25 members could convene house meetings of some sort among their neighbors, just to do more sort of reconnaissance to try to find out which models might resonate better with the community and in the neighborhood.
So this is going to be an expensive process? I mean,
it doesn't have to be. I think it can be kept pretty low cost. People open up their homes. It may require some money for food, you know, so people can serve a meal or something, but just open up their homes for a meeting, and invite neighbors to come over.
It will be a lengthy process, probably. So a good thing to know would be a timeline, like when is this? Is this like an immediate need? Are we looking at things that are immediate need? Are we looking for?
Well, we was hoping that we could, one of our concerns is how do we keep people interested. So we was hoping that we'd have 2 or 3 kind of visioning sessions, decide on a product, and get busy, so that we can start making some money. So I don't have to run around begging for foundation funds. Are we in the same ballpark, or is this something a lot more time consuming?
Well, I think you might be able to have the 2 or 3 sessions and kind of narrow in your focus. But after that, we're going to need to take some time to really look at the feasibility, the market study, and see, because we do want you to get started and make some money, and we don't want you to launch something that's then going to take away energy and not get off the ground. So we want to make sure not to rush. I think you're right that, a couple of visioning sessions to kind of narrow in a focus, but from there, we don't want to rush the process of kind of laying out a plan, looking at feasibility, looking at making sure you're matching up whatever it is that you decide is a product or a service, and that it's serving a real need, and that it's gonna go and make money. Because that's what I'm hearing is your main goal, to kind of wean you off the foundation, state and federal dollars, and so we want to really hear that and support that.
You may also need some time for that group of people to switch their focus from a CDC perspective to one that's more business oriented, where they'll be making different kinds of decisions together, be faced with different challenges, and it'll give them a chance to really push their ideas, understand whether they make sense, and whether that's the right group of people to get those things moving forward.
Yeah, on that, one of my concerns, I got a few really difficult people on that committee. They may be hard workers, but they're kind of hard to handle, and they can sometimes give us hell over silly little things. So how are we going to do this and not just turn this into meeting after meeting and argument after argument, and then and I still get no money in revenue in, and I got folks that are going to give me even more hell at the next board meeting.
Well, I'm sure this is an ongoing struggle within your organization, having to deal with the board and personalities and people that are trying to that get fixated on one small issue and want to try to push through a larger agenda. I think there's a lot of different kind of tasks to do, and we can one thing you can do is look within your core group and see what kind of skills are there, and kind of divide up the work so that people have a job to do that they're focused on, and they can focus on that issue and do a good job with it, and trust that the whole process is coming together, that everyone has a piece of it. It might be one thing, especially if there's anyone in your group that has kind of financial or business skills or any of these kind of background, that can be a real asset, but even other non-traditional skills that we haven't thought of, or maybe it's a new thing because it's a new direction for your CDC, so maybe there's skills within your core that you haven't tapped into yet, so that would be one thing to look at.
Yeah, we got some folks that are pretty good on reading the balance sheet, and they show those skills at every board meeting, so I think it would be good to use them on something helpful. How are we going to begin to look at the process of what things to choose? Because again, like I said, we want to look at something that serves a need, but I don't want us to just get tied down and putting together a little small food co-op, and and then the only revenue might be a couple $100 at the end of the month. Is there a process that we can go through to really get a better sense of what kind of yields and revenues that we can expect? And
well, definitely. What's the survey that you put out already, and what information were you looking for, and what did you find?
One of the things that we found was that we have among the homeowners and members that renters and other things that are part of our operation that there's we're going through, it's a cold winter. Heating oil prices are going up. Most of our folks are using heating oil, and we're trying to figure out some kind of way of and the houses that we own and manage, the heating budget is eating up a lot of our other resources and causing us not to be able to, put more money into maintenance or doing other kinds of activities that we would love to do, but we just don't seem to. We're just trying to make it from day to day. So that was, and we see a lot of folks in the community, seniors and other folks that are really having a tough time. So that's one thing. Again, on the telephone costs and we heard about some folks that did a kind of telecom cooperative where they combined high-speed access and wireless and phone line stuff and was able to, and we think, like I said, we got 1,000 members, and we think if maybe we had a good product that we might be able to expand out to some other folks, but we're still not sure on it.
It seems like one of the first things you might want to look at is, like you mentioned, cooperatives sort of taking a step back and figuring out what sort of the key values that you, besides job creation and revenue, first pinning down what kind of revenue we really are talking about that your organization would need, to what are the values that the organization is espousing to, but then really thinking from there, is a cooperative the thing that we really need? Is that the best way to get that kind of revenue and also fulfill the values and the goals that you're setting for it?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I mean, one of the things that, in that subcommittee, once you meet with them, you'll find that we got some folks that are really crazy about cooperatives. They had some experience with cooperatives when they went through college, and some are in some various small cooperatives now, but a lot of them don't really know that much about it. And then we got some folks that think that is a nutball idea, and that we should be just going a straight up private enterprise route. I mean, let's form an LLC or whatever. I mean, so we're not sure. We don't know what might be the best structure for that. How should we, how do we begin to, and there's a lot of, there's some rancor in the battle already. I mean, so we're trying to, I don't know how we can have that conversation and bring folks together and not apart.
I'm just checking in to see how things are going. I just jumped my group ahead. I'll tell you. You can decide what you want to do. And I gave them, we decided that we actually had finished the strategic planning process. We had a clear business idea. And then we went on to, they're right now working with me on the development plan.
Yeah.
And to break in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, 10, yeah.
So I don't know if you want to do that too, but. Do you need, do you want to do that? Because I could jump you to a specific business if you wanted.
I think we're kind of at the point where we're looking at either something of a heating oil co-op or a telecom co-op. And,
great.
So I think one of the things I was just going to begin to ask a little bit more is, where can I get so maybe if we can begin to just go through this process a little bit more, and I can get a better understanding where I might be able to get the best yield and serve my members most.
Well, one good thing is that the telecom co-op has been done
Mhm.
in communities, similar to yours. And so there are great models. And so for the people on your board who are skeptical, we can definitely give you a lot of good information to take back to them and show them how successful it has been
Mhm.
already.
So what maybe if we I think it seems like that if some strong models already exist on it and since they're kind of going neck and neck in terms of this as an issue, that maybe we can focus on beginning to start that process of the telecom, and then which we can then begin to at least start on how we're going to take this whole thing to the group. So that if we decide to do the telecom, I've just consulted with my board, and they agree on that the telecom might be the best move. What do I do next?
Are your members grouped? I mean, I know you're doing a lot of housing. Like, are they mainly living in your affordable housing units, or are they all over the city? Are they grouped geographically?
They're grouped. I mean, we have some clusters where our housing and stuff is, and then there's some neighborhood groups so that we're very connected to that are in that same general area. So, and we do. We have a newsletter. We got a website, and we have the annual meetings and other things. So there's some degree of we have some different cultural and other kinds of activities at times. So there's some cohesiveness there.
Well, one thing would be to find out what kind of service, if any, they're using now, and what they're paying for it, and how often they're using it. If they don't have access, why? Is it cost related, or is it something that's interesting to them? If it was offered at a lower cost and grouped in this way, is this a service that people want?
So then, so at this point, I'm looking at this form you have, this starting a group-based development plan. We already have this committee. We got a committee of 20, and it's headed up by James Smith.
Pretty diverse as far as skill levels and interests.
Yeah, I mean we have some folks that I have done that are small business people and have some understanding of the process. Not necessarily serious business planning and everything. We got some grocery store owners, we got some hardware store owner in there. And we got a few folks that have been very active on the board for a period of time, and so they're pretty good leaders. And then we got a few other folks that this was the annual meeting was the first time they came, and they liked the idea of this project, and they signed on. So it's a pretty broad continuum, but we got about 4 or 5 folks that are a pretty good core group. So, so what do I do with this thing here? I mean, so we got a committee. I see you got up here who and cost. What do you mean by cost? And so we got this dates, who, and cost, and I'm trying to figure out what do I do next. I got my committee; they're ready to go. So this was the point. Is the market research where we'll get a better understanding of how we're going to deal with this telecom issue.
Yeah, I think that's what Kiara was referring to when she gave that description of finding out more about the potential client base. Now that is going to have a cost associated with it, just in terms of unless you can get volunteers from your committee to do some of the legwork on it. But you know, you may be doing more surveys, making copies. So there might be there'll be some costs associated with it. And this is an opportunity to start planning for that and mapping that out, so you know exactly how much you're going to need up front to do this whole planning strategy. You'll see in number 3, in business development, one of the things that happens in the first 3 to 6 months of planning is that you're going to secure your funds for the stage. So you want to know exactly how much you need to get, and that's what that cost line is for. From the market research, you'll be able to go more into business development and start to refine your idea about the telecom business. Think about exactly what service you might want to be providing, and then you'll start to actually develop this plan in depth. You know, talking with the board and trying to, you know, you're definitely going to probably come up with some disagreement about what people think is the best way to proceed, and that's a really important thing for you to do, and it's important for you to be in those conversations and start arguing about them now, and get through it and make some group decisions about that. And then of course you need to start outreaching, just telling the people, these 100,000 households, about this concept and letting them know that that's what you're planning, so that they're on board and you're getting as much information from them as you can.
I've kind of put together where I got about somewhere between 10 to 12 grand of money I can play with from different to help do this launch. So I got to you know, so that I got something. You know, but will I need more money? Are y'all planning on doing the? Will I need to hire someone to do the market research and the feasibility, or could that be done? You know, from the university or whoever you're connected to?
Well, what would be great is if you could recycle that money back into the community.
Possibly.
So if you know of people, any of your members are already familiar with doing market research, I think that's the first step. And we'd be more than willing to help work with that person, also to keep costs down. Are you talking about 10 to 12,000 over the next 4 stages, or 3 stages, or in just the first stage?
That's all I got right now. So what do we do from there? So okay, so we have so okay, in the first month, month 1, from between now and the end of March, we can bring the committee together and work out those the initial issues, mission and core values, and et cetera. And
What's your annual operating budget?
I'd say it's about $1.5 million. Yeah, something. Probably about $1.5 million.
And growing?
And slightly, not much. I mean, you know, there was a point when it was doing a lot better, but now we're kind of sticking around that. You know, we'd love to figure out how to get 2 or 3. You know, 3 would be where we really need to be, but we just haven't been able to get too much further than that 1.5. And a lot of that is tied down in the discretionary funds that I can't do too much with.
I'm just thinking of where you're trying to get to in terms of generating revenue that will run the organization and support the organizing efforts.
I'm just hoping, you know, we haven't really did as serious projections and stuff, but I was hoping that we could see, you know, over in a year or two, a year of, you know, 50 to 100 grand of new money that we can add to projects and you know, that people care about. like supporting young people, or doing doing urban agriculture, some of these other things that we want to do, but I just haven't been able to find the money to do it.
One way that you can invest the initial money that you have to potentially get you some more to take you through some of the stages is in creating the business plan, which you can then use as a tool to get other outside investors interested in helping fund some of the later stages of the plan. That will lay out the entire strategy for the business. It'll also give you a sense for where some of the challenges are going to be, help you work through some of the potential issues. Also, just give you a more realistic sense of how much revenue you can expect to get from it, which will really help in understanding what this role this business is going to have for the organization as a whole. And then if you have a few investors coming in and helping start the business up, then you'll be in a better position to actually follow through with that business plan.
Okay, so if so how about I heard I can get a pretty decent business plan done for about $5,000. We do have a one of the neighborhood one of the members of the organization runs a consulting operation, and I've heard she does some pretty decent business plans. I'm not sure all her experience, but in your idea, that might not be a bad thing. What do you think?
About the business plan to keep in mind is that it's a really good tool in terms of helping the group develop the skills and decision making that they're going to need later on in order to manage. So it would be wonderful to work with this one member, but to make sure that she is bringing the most important decisions back to the group, so they are being made collectively, and so that she alone isn't putting together a plan that she's going to present to the group that they don't have a sense of ownership over.
Yeah, because that might be a problem. She likes to work and hand you a finished product of it.
Maybe just give her a different job.
Yeah. Okay. So.
We're going to need a lawyer and an accountant and a number of technical assistants that we might not have within this group, and they got to be tight.
So we can go. What can we do? I mean, we're open. I mean, is there anywhere we could get some support? Because, like I said, again, I figure if we put $1,000 in toward the setting up the doing the OD work with the core committee, and if like I said, we say around $5,000 for the creating the business plan, and leaves me about $6,000. I mean,
one thing we could do is tap into our regional cooperative network and see what's there, and I definitely would want you to get hooked up with them anyway to find out what else, but they might know people who have offered pro bono services in the past, or people that are interested in this work, so we should definitely look into that.
So, and then on the, so we got a business plan. So we're saying within by that by September, the end of September, I should have be able to expect a business plan being able to deliver. I have another large annual meeting coming up at the end of November, and so I want to be able to at least show that between the last annual meeting where we made that decision and this annual meeting that something happens other than that we met a lot. So do you think we could have something in place in 6 months from today?
Yes. I think so. I'm not promising. I'm saying that I think we can do it. And I think it'll be really important for, at that annual meeting, be able to announce, okay, this is how much money we need, this is how much money we think we're going to get in revenue. Let's think about our annual budget over the next year to incorporate some of the next phases to really get this on the ground.
One of the things you got in here about member development, and you got that even in the first 3 to 6 months, and that's one thing that hit me is like, I want to make sure that as we got this 10 or 15 folks that are going to be working real hard on it, that I don't leave everybody else behind. You know, so I mean, what could we be doing? You know, that, you know, is there a possibility that we could be doing a couple things at once? That while we're fleshing out this idea, could we be doing something with the members to keep them in the game?
It seems, and I've never really thought about this in depth, so it's just off the top of my head, but it seems that since we have to do a marketing plan also, and it looks like it might be within this sort of same time frame, it's usually something fun that people can get involved in thinking about creatively how to incorporate or bring other people to the table, how to brand this, how to advertise it, and having frequent meetings around that and giving the update of the business plan as it goes along to keep people on the same track seems like a good way to get something done and keep people involved and keep moving ahead.
Yeah, and if like one of the things, again, I mean, that we have some, maybe we could make use of some of the tools that the organization has, like the newsletters, the idea of the house meetings, to, you know, just maybe just talking generally about this idea that we can begin to do, this community can build up some self-reliance and begin to start generating its own monies as it's doing some good work. So you know, so we can, and then, like I said, we have our website. We were looking at the possibility of picking up adding on some online tools that allow us to do some brainstorming and kind of collaborative discussion and decision making online, you know, so that we can, so everything doesn't have to be a meeting. So I mean, so maybe we could put that into the plan that we'll be using the newsletter, using the website, and using regular meetings and holding some special meetings to keep the members in the game and get new ideas and build the process. Should we be talking to anybody outside the organization at this point before we have a business plan? You know, like we have friends in legislature, other stakeholders, you know, folks that we collaborate with.
I think the market research needs to come first. I think when you go to talk to people, especially those kind of people, that you want to be a little bit more clear than you are now in terms of your plan, and that you can see how it can make money and how it's feasible, and then you're going to want to garner support from them. So I would, well, maybe this 6 month, this big meeting coming up, we try to have the market study done, you know, a loose business plan in place that it still has room to adjust based on, you know, what folks at that meeting see, but that you're real clear in terms of the product and the marketability and the profit margin and the, I don't know what else.
Unless there's some people that you think politically need to be involved or would be useful in the initial planning stages, that they have real skill sets that they can bring to that process. So it would be less about getting their support in terms of the marketing and more about actually having them help you out with it. So those are the people that you want to recruit and bring in. You know, if you think that there are going to be some people that are connected to the community that will feel threatened by the plan if you simply make an announcement and then they find out about it, then, you know, or who might have input as to how you go about doing your business plan, that might be useful to talk to them ahead.
Yeah, we got one city council person and one of our state legislators that have been really had to trot on the whole telecom issue, and and how to produce some savings to seniors in the community, and they've been good friends to us, so they've been a good sounding board, and they, and we might be able to get $1 or $2 out of them, for a planning process, in a member item or something, and some fairly quick money.
I think having a commitment from a core group of members is going to be really important to show that there are people behind us. And also, just looking ahead, it seems like my brief experience adopting the bylaws is one of the most difficult parts of the process. So developing ways to think about how to do that most efficiently is going to be really.
So how long do you think that? When should we take on that? So it's in the part
definitely
3?
Definitely after the annual meeting in November, even.
Okay.
One thing to think about is whether you want a different board and a different set of bylaws and a different governing body for the business than you do for the CDC. And I don't know the answer. It depends on what that would mean, what that would look like. So it might be pulling in members who are not currently on the board, but here's a chance for them to take on a different leadership within the business development piece.
Yeah, and that's something that's been bothering us a little bit, because we have some board members saying that we just can't do anything that more, and but then we have a lot of other members that are saying that they don't have enough to do, for the organization. So I'm trying to, as the board chair, I'm trying to how to sort that out, so that and then also like legally, depending on what structure is, I want to make sure that I protect the founding board. If we start this new effort and loses money, how do I make sure that everything doesn't go with it? Okay, so that's good. I mean, so we're saying that that we have a. I understand that we're going to work together on working with our subcommittee, and we got 3 months within that. We'll clarify mission and core vision. We'll start the market research process. I think I know of somebody, the Sally Ryder, the consultant group. I mean, she's pretty good at talking to people and doing business planning. So so I should be able to get her to do this for the 5, so we can make that happen. And we've talked about the setting up a founding board and incorporating and adopt the bylaws. And so you said we're going to need an attorney. We do have an attorney that's been working with the board on a number of different questions. So we can bring them in, and our accountant. Will we need any kind of specialized? They've never done cooperatives before. But they're good folk. They're hardworking. They care about what we do. Could that be a problem? I mean, I don't know.
They're going to have to spend a lot of time studying up on this new set of laws that they don't necessarily know about yet. So, I mean, to begin with, I guess, to save on costs, if they're ready to put in that extra work and just learn up about this, then.
Or at least bring in some technical expertise around the telecom industry specifically, because they might have experience with cooperatives.
My guy's a housing guy. I mean, he knows housing, and he knows nonprofit law, but he's open. I mean, so maybe we can work out something where he can work in concert with your TA and any other kinds of experts. So you can, so we don't step into something that we don't need to step in. I mean,
so those are the first steps, but you're also going to have to think about equities pretty soon, both from your members and, of course, from outside.
I got a lot of poor folk. I mean, can't we just go get a grant? I mean, Do we have to do equity? I mean,
No.
You're gonna have to raise some equity from your members, and you know, you don't want.
It's part of the ownership stake.
oh, we should
We're
be.
taking our break.
Okay. Okay. So, oh, so I can we have a minute or?
Sure.
Okay. Well, why don't we just? Do you want to? We can do the wrap up. Both all together, or you want to?
Well, we were going to take our break and then do wrap up when we came back.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
But you're welcome to do it.
No, I think we're. So what else? Just finish up on the equity thing.
Everybody's got cable.
Yeah, and they know it costs, right? so
Just a question of, we don't want to strap people who are already strapped, but you know, you are going to think about where people spending their money and can we offer better, cheaper services.
And can we set up a way for if that some folks can pay all at once, but maybe a payment plan for some of the folks that like the $10 a week on it until they get theirs in. I think would help a little bit if because I got about a third of my members are definite serious low income, and I think we can make a case for them to invest, but they'll need some help on it. Okay, well I'm feeling a lot better. I mean, I think we got it. Like I said, we got a group subcommittee that's working on it. We've decided on a definite product that we want to at least go after, and y'all sold me that that I need to be involved in a longer business planning process than I had intended, and we got to plan up at least to setting up the just what you call stage 2 here.
So we'll be involved. It sounds like after November is when the next stage will really kick in.
Yeah. So then after that, and then we can buy it after the. We can walk into that. As long as I can walk into that annual meeting with a business plan in my pocket, a clear plan on how we're going to move forward, then I think we can begin to really launch this operation. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then we'll talk.
You can cut for a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, and this next piece I'm going to walk you through the strategic planning and the business planning decision points that the biodiesel company that I've been working on for the last year and a half met, so you can kind of see a real case study and what I did and didn't do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop at several key decision points and ask you all to tell me what you would do in that situation, and then I'll tell you what I did and go on to the next one, just to give you a sense of all the branching decision making and opportunities for group participation in the process. So our first decision point was in the strategic planning process, where a group of about 50 consumers got together and wanted biodiesel. They believed that biodiesel was a really important product, and they wanted to get a whole lot of people using biodiesel instead of diesel fuel. And I didn't know what biodiesel was, so I had to figure that out. Does anybody here know what biodiesel is? It's diesel. It's a diesel fuel that's made from vegetable oil, either virgin oil, soybeans, or
French fries.
or waste vegetable oil that comes from taking,
potato chips.
oil and cooking some food and from restaurants and food manufacturing facilities. And biodiesel burns much more clean than diesel fuel. In fact, Rudolf Diesel, who's the inventor of the diesel engine, said that this whole idea of burning petroleum diesel in his engines was kind of a weird thing that wasn't going to last very long. His engines were designed for vegetable oil diesel. And so that was
What's the,
biodiesel.
but what is the chemical that fuels the engine?
What's the chemical that fuels?
Is it ethanol? I mean,
No, ethanol is made with corn and that,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, it's a diesel fuel.
What can I tell you about this? I can't tell you it. There's a lot of people I work with who could give you the exact chemical composition. And I know when you take waste vegetable oil and you mix it with the catalysts that you get glycerin out and you get diesel fuel out as the two products of that chemical reaction. But I can't tell you what the biodiesel chemical composition is. But I could send it to you because I've got it probably about 30 documents on my desktop at home. But anyway, but it's a fuel that even if you mix it in a small percentage with diesel fuel, it cleans up the diesel fuel. So if you put a 5% mix of biodiesel in with 95% diesel fuel in a home heating oil system, it cleans up the emissions from that heating, from all of the fuel from that whole system. So it's really a great environmental benefit. So this group of 50 people came in and I said, so, you want to do business development. What business do you want to start? And they said, well, we're not sure. Maybe we want to buy some biodiesel together. We're all driving our diesel trucks and we want to put biodiesel in it, so let's buy diesel together. And then other people said, no, we're going to be starting the market. We want to get grant money to have us be able to go out into the community and educate everybody about why biodiesel is important and why air quality is important and what we all have to do as consumers to really make a difference. And then another group wanted to make biodiesel. In fact, one of the people in the group was making biodiesel already, and in a small on-farm manufacturing facility, he'd made about 10,000 gallons. And so a lot of people in the group wanted to build a biodiesel production facility. So what do you think I did? What would you do? Yeah, let's not guess what I did. What would you do given that lovely, group array of opportunities?
Lynn, will you run them down again quickly? Just for those of them?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. 50 folks divided up on these 3 different projects, possible directions.
Pretty evenly, actually.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
well, if there was a big enough community to supply the needed waste vegetable oil, then it would seem that manufacturing would be a possible good economic and good environmental, approach. But one would need to know something about the process, just how much vegetable oil and what are the logistics of collecting it and all of that.
So what would you say to the group?
I'd say, let's get some other ideas.
So, well, I'm sort of wondering what their goals were. Like, was one of their goals to create jobs? Because it seems like the community education piece might not be job related necessarily. Or are they trying to just bring in as much revenue as possible? Or are they really trying to prove that this could work and they're looking to scale up eventually? Or, sort of establishing what do they really want out of it?
So that's going to the question of why. Why did you all come in this room today? What's your primary motivation? And the answer to that question was, we want to have an impact on the environment and on the local economy. So again, that's like people come in with solutions all the time, but what motivated them to even start looking for solutions? What problem were they solving? So those were the two problems, with mostly having an environmental impact being the driver. So then what would you say? What might you say?
Well, it seems like potentially they could do all three of these things. They're connected and related, and they could be aligned with their goal, but it's probably not feasible to start all three of them at once. So can the group move behind one of them as a startup? That might be something I would say.
That'd be a good approach.
I'm sorry, what was the group buying?
Biodiesel.
Buying the biodiesel fuel?
They have diesel vehicles that they run, trucks and cars, and some are using it for home heating, and so they. That's right. That's right. And he was selling to many of the folks in the group, but they were also, he couldn't make enough, so they were also buying from World Energy, another, national distributor.
Is there any way you could combine the community education with the manufacturing component? Having the community education serve as like an organizing base of not only teaching people about the environmental benefits of it, but also getting them educated and hip to the fact that this is something that that this one person in the community is already doing with it. We can actually do it as a business, not only to sustain ourselves, but possibly even market some surplus, outside.
So that would be a good question to include, see if there's a way of linking up some of that, and to see if there's a way of doing all three. And what I did was I said, well, there's a lot of people in the room. What would you like to do? How do you want to proceed? And there was one person who said, I volunteer to be the bulk purchasing coordinator. And a bunch of us really need it. We really want it. I'll go do that. I said, okay, is that what the group wants to do? And everybody said, oh yeah, man, if he'll do that, that's fantastic. So they decided to do group buying, and this one person went off to coordinate. Community education, another person already had been out in the community, going to a lot of conferences. The person who was making the biodiesel, he was already going to conferences and holding press releases, sending out press releases. And so everybody said, well, if you want to keep doing that, that's great, but maybe that can go in this manufacturing business that we're doing. Maybe we can do some of that. And then the rest of the group, I asked them, I said, so which one of these will have the largest environmental impact? If that's your goal, which one of these activities will have the largest impact? And they said, the manufacturing. If there's actually more biodiesel being produced and used in our community, that's going to have the largest impact on air quality. So let's do that. Let's do the research for that. And clearly there's a lot of questions. Is there enough waste vegetable oil in our community? Is the technology available? All kinds of questions. I forgot to write the technology down as a decision point. But anyway, all kinds of questions that need to be answered, which, at this point in our process, we don't have any of the answers to, and we just got to keep putting them up on the list of more things we have to research. So that's how we went through that.
So they walked away saying, we're going to do manufacturing, and the two other people are going to keep doing their work.
Right, but our group is going to focus on this manufacturing business and overseeing the research that's needed in order to figure out whether it's feasible, and then if it is, how we're going to do it. So we filled out that whole development timesheet. I actually have them in my file. I should have brought you one so you could see it, but I filled that out with all my groups, and we've signed a memorandum of understanding about roles and responsibilities, who was the champion, what role I was playing, what role the steering committee was going to play, what I would do and what they would do, and we all signed it. It's kind of a little ceremony. So we're just making very clear agreements with each other about what we can do. I raised a $20,000 grant from USDA to support hiring folks to work on the feasibility research at that point. Yes, so the next thing that came on is we were in a feasibility study meeting doing the research, and then I just overheard that that the group buying actually happened. They said something about maybe they would, this one person would work on it, but I didn't, I wasn't paying attention to it. And then I heard that they were doing it. They actually were doing a lot of it. There were big 55-gallon drums of biodiesel being moved all over the county. And I said, well, already, you guys, that's fantastic. We should incorporate, so that there's limited liability. If there's a spill, it's like this is a big deal. And I advised them to incorporate, and they said, we don't want to. And they didn't. So there was a lot of money that was changing hands, all based on trust, and a lot of biodiesel going all over, and all staying in its drums. And
wait, I don't understand. This is before they decided to manufacture. So where was the biodiesel coming from?
From World Energy, or from another supplier. I don't even know. They were, bidding it out, and they had this whole operation going.
What were the reasons for not wanting to incorporate?
Too much hassle. So I felt strongly that incorporation was essential, just because there was a lot of money and there's a lot of product. And biodiesel is biodegradable. It's like spilling vegetable oil on your lawn, but still, it's like, I don't know, I was nervous about it. They weren't. It's their project, so they decided not to incorporate. I try to be persuasive, but I don't always manage it. The next thing was we were having meetings and kind of moving along, and then the person who was the champion, who had really started a lot of the meetings and had signed the agreement as he stopped coming to meetings, but he continued to represent himself as the chair of this committee. And he actually held a press conference and said some things that the committee was very upset about, because what he said in the press conference and what got published in our paper was in direct opposition to what our grant said. So he said our grant was going to be used for buying equipment, and the grant was a planning grant. So the group was really nervous about that, and wrote him a letter. I'm not supposed to tell you this. I'm supposed to have you say, okay, so what do you think the group should do? What do you think I should do? If you're in, or what do you think you would do if you're in a position where one of the leaders kind of cuts off and goes in another direction? We had a couple in the group, so there was the guy who was making the biodiesel was still there and really serving a lot in that capacity.
I think you would have to have a conversation just to check his expectations against your expectations, to see where he's at or she is at, and then have a hard conversation about what you're going to do. If their expectation is something different, then you might have to give them the boot. So, but
yeah, I would. Something that very quickly you could talk to him and see where he's at in the whole thing. But then, but he has to, publicly retract the statement because it's, damaging. And if not, then, immediately you have to publicly think that you should issue a counter statement, a public statement. Say, this guy hasn't been coming to meetings, he's no longer serving in this position, so you can't possibly know. He's just making just a false claim, a false judgment. And move on.
I think you should get him a job with Halliburton.
But it's also a reminder that if you have a really charismatic sort of champion, that you still need to set up a structure of how they're accountable the same way you would. And boards have their problems as well, and they're not always the most effective. But some way that the champion can just run away with the cause.
And because we signed that memorandum of understanding, it came in handy earlier than I thought it would, but we had a process in place, with the steering committee, and and so the steering committee called this person, made a lot of effort to kind of figure out how to fix what was going on, And this person is really charismatic, totally committed to biodiesel, to environmental justice, to making a difference in the world, had brought most of us to the table, including me, so we all felt a real loyalty to him and really wanted him in the project. But he had some concerns and some things that he needed that we couldn't meet. And so the group finally had to, and he continued to talk publicly representing the project. And so the group sent him a registered letter saying, you are hereby required to no longer represent this group. And it was a very sad day in the project. We all felt really bad about it. And I still do feel bad about it. Next thing, relationship with other cooperatives. This was the Pioneer Valley Biodiesel Cooperative, and there was another energy cooperative that was doing all kinds of other things in the area, including biodiesel. They weren't doing anything about biodiesel, but they would be glad to. They were doing things about electricity and solar energy installations and whatnot. So there was a question about whether to partner with them or not. Is this a competitor, or is this a cooperative group that we want to share information with? Where are the lines, and how do we figure out what our relationship is? So what would you do if the group were thinking about those things? How would you coach them?
And you said they were in the same geography, like the same, basically the same market?
Identical. All looking at consumers who are environmentally conscious.
The mafia approach.
I think you'd want to check to see, like you asked about, are they a competitor? I think that might be your first question to look at. And are you competing for members, or are you competing for in the group purchasing, or in what products you're focusing on? So if you can identify that there's not a competition, then the next question would be, well, could there be a collaboration? Could there be complementary activities? So I think that would be the first question I would ask. Not that I think necessarily if they're a competitor that rules out any future collaboration, because maybe there could be benefits to cooperating on a bigger scale that you could explore. But I think I would ask that first question: are they a competitor?
Any other thoughts?
My understanding if there's a niche for this group that's not being served by the other. If the other group is talking about maybe serving consumers who are mostly concerned about their homes, as opposed to this biodiesel group who is mostly concerned about like farming and other sort of bigger enterprises.
For transportation, more so. That was a big difference. Yeah. What we did was we encouraged the groups to meet each other. We built personal relationships between those. So the steering committee and the board met. They talked about potential ways they could collaborate. They built trust between those two organizations. And that was actually key to moving this project forward. If we hadn't done that at that point, I think this probably would have died out for lack of resources. But because they built that connection and they had trust between, and they actually, the energy co-op had some people join the board from this group, so that, to kind of even build some governance relationships that I think played a big part in being able to move this project forward. The next thing we had to do, did we miss one? Nope.
No.
We were in the middle of our feasibility study, and we ran into a market research crisis, because you can't ask consumers, do you want biodiesel, and how much will you buy? How would you all answer that question? What is it? What is it? I never heard of it before. So traditional market research doesn't really work well with a new product. I mean, before people saw Post-it notes, how many people would say that they would need them? It's very hard with new products. So we had to find surrogate data in order to document that there would be a market for biodiesel. Do you have some ideas on where you could get surrogate data? surrogate data, which is, you know, other data about what consumers do and when, that would show that there would be a market. I also want to give you one other piece of information. In June of 2006, there are new requirements, sulfur exhaust requirements that are coming in that all diesel vehicles will have to comply with, and biodiesel is the cheapest way for any consumer to have to meet those requirements. And John Deere has just announced that all of its equipment's coming off with biodiesel in the engine, and there's a new Jeep, Cherokee Jeep, Damon Chrysler Jeep is coming off the line with biodiesel. So there's a lot of movement in the industry, in the diesel vehicle industry, to promote biodiesel. So we have these pieces of information that consumers are going to need to use something. They're going to need to do something, either put on expensive new converters to their vehicles or use biodiesel in order to meet the emissions criteria. So we know that, and we know that it's going to make all of the home heating oil cleaner that people burn in their homes. And there's a lot of people in New England and New York that heat their homes with home heating oil. So what kind of data could we go out and collect in the market that would help us convince anybody that we could sell, we were trying to sell 500,000 gallons of biodiesel a year?
You can look at other alternative fuels that have come on the market. I mean, I know that hydrogen-powered vehicles have come out, and look at the response to that, and also maybe look at people's response to the kind of environmental friendly campaigns that have been done for traditional fuel sources like BP and all those, even, you know, Hummer, it's kind of an environmentally friendly monster car advertising campaign, just to see what consumer, like whether that shifts consumer markets at all.
When you want to look at just diesel consumption period and just look at conversion rates and then sort of calculate, you know.
That's what we did. We documented how many gallons of home heating oil are used in Massachusetts within a 60-mile radius of where we were going to build the plant and throughout the Northeast, and how much diesel vehicle fuel is used in those two regions. And we showed that the total output of the plant, actually, right now, was a very tiny percent of that, of what was used. And then we used some of the other data with ethanol and other, you know, consumer interest in buying local, consumer interest in environmental purchase, you know, growing interest in those regions, to say this is why we believe we're only looking for a very tiny market share of, you know, in Massachusetts, never mind in the Northeast, we can easily sell to the Northeast. And so far, the investors and the bankers are not questioning that. So that's the surrogate data that we put in. And so far, it's passed all of the straight face tests. We're excited about that. Feasibility study completed with 500,000 gallons a year showed that we would barely break even, and that our cost of operation, which was kind of the steady amount, was enough that it ate up any possibility of profits, that we were going to have to produce more biodiesel if we wanted. We could barely break even just covering our costs. We couldn't provide any return to investors in the plant, and even at 500,000, the plant needed 1.2 million in to capitalize, you know, to build it, put the equipment in, and start producing. So, so we knew that we weren't going to be raising 1.2 million. If we could, we might have gone ahead, you know, just barely breaking even. We talked about that, but we decided maybe that wasn't the best scenario anyway. And it looked like because the fixed costs weren't going to go up if we produced more biodiesel, because it's basically a chemical reaction. You know, you're just opening valves and moving, you know, the product from one tank through a little process to another tank where it had to settle to another tank. So If you have bigger tanks, it doesn't take more labor. It doesn't take a much bigger building. So all of our fixed costs stay the same. So if we increase the number of gallons, our gross margin, would improve. So what would you recommend the groups think about doing at that point, given the results of that feasibility study? Get bigger tanks. So we decided not to do a new feasibility study, but we went into the business planning process with the assumption that we had to figure out how much bigger. So we put together all of the pro forma. We pretty much had decided we were going to build a plant, and we put together the pro forma, all of the financials for looking at a, how many year spread? At that point, I think it was 10 years out. Started 5, but then we put it to 10. Looking at how things would go, and then we tried, doing different amounts, and came to the conclusion that we needed to have a minimum of 2 million gallons a year production. And at that point, it looked good. Our competition research also showed us that there were a lot of new plants being built. Just it's at the industry curves. Well, we are at the beginning of this one, and it's going up like this. You'll hear about biodiesel now, because you'll notice the word. You'll hear about it everywhere you go, and it's going to be a lot more. So we're right at the beginning of a new industry that's really booming, and will likely be rolled up in a period of time by some, large consolidator that comes through and buys up all the biodiesel plants in its wake. And the group didn't want that. This group of local owners of this biodiesel production facility didn't want to be in the business of making a lot of money and going off to some southern climate. Yes?
Is your group interested in maybe doing a Madragon type of collaboration with other producers around biodiesel and other places?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But we'd like to get one plant done first.
Yeah.
A lot of replicable possibilities.
This is definitely a replicable model. It's the best business model it's the best business plan we've ever, the most likely to succeed. This is definitely a 9.5 out of 10 on our scale. So we had to figure out how to raise. Now we needed $3.7 million for this production facility. So we needed a lot more capital. And we didn't want to have a structure that, we would be giving away to venture capitalists who would then make a killing. And we would make a lot of money off of our money, our little bit of money. We'd make a lot of money off of it. But we don't care about money. We're not in it for money. We want to make an environmental, a difference in the environment. And I always, you notice my pronouns is we. It's like I'm a part of the groups I'm working with. See you later, Khalil. And so we had to figure out how to design, bite your own. We had to design a legal structure that would allow for long-term community ownership, but outside equity. And so what we came up with was the Pioneer Valley Biodiesel Cooperative formed a co-op. I forgot to tell you that the only way they got their business plan done was because the other energy co-op paid for it. And the other energy co-op actually raised $400,000 to put into their business startup. So that's where their initial equity capital came from. So it was a nice thing that they had those meetings and got together with the other board and built relationship. And so they had that $400,000. They got another grant for $250,000 for building and equipment. And the members agreed to raise another $100,000. So they had $750,000, but they still needed, more money. And so what they decided to do is to form a cooperative, which they called Co-op Power, and have that cooperative be a 51% owner in a limited liability corporation that was manufacturing the biodiesel. that make sense to folks?
We haven't-
A cooperative can't take equity in from other groups and give a big return on that equity.
'cause our-
It's illegal. You know, the corporate structure requires you to give a return to the members based on how much they're using the co-op. And so you can have some preferred shares, but there's a limit on how much return. I think it's about 12% of what you can give back to people. And there's no way that we're raising $2 million if we're giving a 12% simple return.
Given the angels, the venture folks out there as it is.
So, so anyway, so that's what they decided to do, make it LLC. And we're right now, today, in the process of talking with investors about coming in. And we're offering them, you know, a smaller share of the business than their equity would buy them if you just do the simple math. But we're talking with equity investors who are really interested in long-term local ownership. And so they're engaged with us in this conversation about how to help us get the equity there. And we're engaged with them in the conversation about how to get their equity out and give them a good return on their equity in exchange for their, you know, generous participation in this process. So pretty fun.
An equity investor also. So did they have part ownership of?
They didn't want them. They're about bringing renewable energy resources to the region, and they thought this was a good way to do one piece of it. So, and their members will have access to biodiesel. So that was a good thing. Next thing, we had to figure out who was going to be the manager. And one of the champions who was still there, who was making biodiesel, managing a very tiny on-farm biodiesel production facility, at first was interested in being manager, but then as it got to $2 million, he said, oh, you know, I'm probably not the best person for that. And then we had a business planner who was doing all the business planning, creating all these pro formas, and really understood the inside of the business really well. And everybody agreed he could probably be a good manager. And then there was the question about having an open search process to hire. And what would you coach the group to do?
The business planner.
Yeah. Why do you think that would be?
Probably he has the most familiarity with everything that's gone on before and the entire process and the future as a vision for the future. As opposed to an open search process where you really have to almost train that person to understand what's been going on for the last.
Yeah. And he already has a stake in it, which you would hope somebody coming in would develop, but don't know.
It's interesting. I have a rule, because I've seen so many business planners for all of those reasons become the first general manager. I have a rule that when I hire a business planner, I say, you have to commit to me that you will not, even if you're coerced into taking the job, you will not take it. Just because business planning skills are really different than management skills. And if a group just slides their business planner into that management role, I guarantee it's not the best person for them. And it's the group's instinct almost in every case to pick the business planner and hire them. But in this particular case, I wasn't opposed to it, because this guy had the management experience and the financial expertise, and he'd also had manufacturing expertise. Did I say that already? You know, financial and manufacturing, and you know, he'd done business startup. This guy, in my mind, had met a lot of the criteria, but the group hadn't even set their criteria yet. They didn't know, they hadn't thought through what it would take for this business to be successful. So they, you know, I ask all the groups I work with to have an open search process. In fact, I often, in the first MOU, I often build that in. You will follow sound business practices, You will make your decisions based on research data, and you will, go through a feasibility study and business planning process, and you will capitalize the business if it's feasible, and you will have an open search process for your management positions. I mean, I often put those things into my MOU, just because I feel that strongly about it. I don't know if that's right or not, but in my experience, I've just seen a bunch of projects die because that first manager didn't have all of the skills needed. So we went to an open search process. The business planner applied. A lot of other people applied. The business planner became the CFO for the business because we hired somebody else who hired him. And the new manager that came in was so fantastic, had the vision, thought this was an incredible opportunity, and had skills far beyond anybody I thought would ever apply for that job. And has come in with such an incredible leadership, drive, vision. It's been so much fun.
There wasn't a whole lot of training necessary, or catching him up to speed.
I started following his orders the day after I offered him the job.
A win-win.
Not his orders, but he would say, okay, and now we need to do this, and calls me the next day. Said, can I start? I said, well, I don't have an employment contract. I was like, we got this. He said, okay, we can work on all this, but can I start? It's like, well, I don't have permission to pay you yet from the board. I said, can I start? It's okay. Can I come in today? We had a lot to do. I was like, yes, absolutely, And so he came in with his list of what to do. I said, great, what of that do you want me to pick up? So he started providing incredible leadership right from the beginning with a real understanding of what was going to take to pull that off. And I think the business planner would have done a great job too. But I think we're in a different environment because we did that. And it was a unanimous 100% decision. When we were thinking about maybe let's not do a search process, and the group was saying, oh, it's a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and I don't know if we want to do that. And, I brought them a draft of the job description and a draft of the hiring process and offered to staff the hiring process and blah, blah, blah. So they were deciding, and they were really ambivalent about who to hire. Should they hire this person? Should they hire, let's just make a decision. But they had no unanimity amongst themselves about whether they wanted a really big biodiesel production facility or whether they thought they wanted to keep it at 2 million, or whether, there were still a bunch of different visions that were coming out in who they preferred for the general manager. By the time we finished the general manager hiring process, they had gone through all of that and had such unanimity of vision for what they were going to do in their business and who they wanted to lead that. By vetting, we had 7 candidates, all of whom I think would have done a great job running that biodiesel facility. I've never had such an incredible pool of candidates before. So the process that the board went through of figuring out, and they all offered kind of a different vision of where they would take the business. And by going through that process of really deciding who they wanted, they came to more shared understanding of what they wanted that business to be in the world. It was unanimous at the end. And so it was just a fantastic kind of coming together of minds. It was great. And good. And the last part is the new manager came in with a new vision, and he said, 2 million gallons, that's all fine and pretty, but if you don't want to get rolled up, if you want to actually be a player in this industry, 10 million gallons a year is the minimum for what you can be producing. And our research had showed us that, and when we put our plan together, we said we're going to start with 2 million, and as soon as we secure access to the feedstock we need, we're going to grow, but we don't know how much and to what. And within a month, he had done all the research to show that we could grow to 10 million, and we needed to do it within about 1.5 years to 2 years. And so we redid the business plan for the 5th time and put in all those new numbers and are taking that out. So that's all I can tell you so far because that's all I know.
Where are you looking for financing?
I can't tell you the names of the companies right now on video, but there's a venture capital firm that we're talking to. There's a government entity, actually the Mass Technology Collaborative. We're talking with them. And we're talking with angel investors in our region that have put in significant, couple $100,000 in it. Several other ventures that we've done. So it's a mix.
One of the important points that from that and in the role plays we went through is how to use those decision points as growth mechanisms, as consensus building. You know, not to fear conflicts that are going to happen. Know that these things will be coming up. You know, that it may be different in different places. This question of the changing role of champions almost always happens. I mean, the champion you start with quite often won't be the champion you end with. You know, what happens? Does the group grow and get stronger from that, or get into an ugly battle and dissipate? You know, I mean, but handling well, I mean, you can prepare for it. The issues of what structure, what corporate relationship, new information coming out of the feasibility studies, it's going to happen. Your mind's going to change in the course of it. That's it. But I think that what they've done well in that project was that each one of those. They've used it as a chance to grow. They didn't back away and fear it. You know, they brought it openly into the middle of the group and used it as a way to strengthen and deepen the consensus and build even greater commitment to because on a few of these things, you know, a lot of folks thought, you know, there was you know, this is going to be a toughie. You know, I mean, you know, trying to figure out, you know, like I said, when you got somebody that was the heart and soul, you know, you know, for quite a long time, like I said, and a lot of boards and a lot of, how do we, you know, how to use that as a way for the group to get clear that no matter who you are, even though you may have been the original owner of the idea, you can't ignore the collective decision making authority of the group, you know, so that using that as a way to you know, and that was like a qualitative leap for that group, that they were able to say, hey, we can make decisions. We can hold people to our, you know, to the decisions we made. We're that strong an organization, and we can keep on growing, even when, you know, that person decides to, you know, not to abide by the collective wisdom of the group and go another direction. So, you know, so in each one of those things, using them as a way to grow and get stronger instead of, you know, running from that conflict or trying to bury it somewhere, you know, or you know, handling it in a back room. But like I said, I'm just seeing welcoming it, you know, and I think that's the approach that we like to see is the, you know, look as a consultant and coach, you know, to look for those points that the group can get stronger, that it can grow and build its consensus by having a good, well facilitated conversation on how we're going to resolve this problem and move forward and be a stronger group for the better of it. And like I say, and all too often that doesn't happen. You know, we'll go on and then we run into that first battle at the 3-year level or the 2-year level or the 1-year level or the 7-year level, and then the group blows up into 100 pieces. You know, because they didn't use those points to get stronger. They allowed them to be the breaking points.
Going into business is as big together with another human being or another group of people is as serious as getting married. And if you have not, you know, gone through, if you've not built trust, gone through conflict, solved problems together, before you go into business, you will not do it when you're in business. So this work is not for conflict avoiders. It's for people who like to lean into conflict and watch what happens. Watch the breakthrough that happens when you're leaning in. And I do think it's the magic. It's, you know, it's one of the things. Most of us, conflict, you know, can I go to the other room while you guys finish that up? But that it doesn't work at all in this work. This is definitely about leaning in and building using it as, I had an evaluation from this group for my work with them, because I'm actually the interim manager for this group. And so they did this evaluation, and one of the comments I loved the most was, they said, you managed to use every opportunity to help us ratchet up every conflict that we faced, we not only solved the problem with your help, but you helped us ratchet up to a new level so that we could, be even better prepared to build our business. And I do think it's one of the keys to being successful in supporting this work. Let's save this.
Yeah.
We're going to do the last 2 pages in your handout on legal structure stuff that when we come next time. Is that all right? And what I would love to do is just a couple minutes of evaluation, because we've just finished 6 hours together, and we have another 6 to go. And we love to learn and get better at what we're doing, and the only way we can do that is by hearing from you, like, what of the things that we've done in the last 2 days have been the most useful? What would you like more of? What would you like less of? Can I steal this?
What the thing that stuck in my mind the most, I was trying to tell Jerome, who wasn't here, was when you laid out the 5 things and we created the scale for them, the 5 essential things, like that one's going to stick with me definitely. And it gave me something to think about, like, because when we broke into role play today, I was like, huh? Like it was hard because I felt like we're not ready, we don't know what we're talking about. But having done that, like I felt like I had, like that had prepared me, like in some respects, like, and the packet is pretty comprehensive. But I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to start this conversation. But knowing that you had said these are the 5 things, you can't do it without it, and taking the time to talk about what each of those 5 things looks like on a scale of 0 to 3 or whatever, that was really good for me.
Other people thinks you got more of, less of.
I found the same exercise very helpful, and I hadn't even realized how helpful until the role play did. The role plays were really difficult, which is not a bad thing at all. I think they were quite good, but really challenging.
One thing I would like to see is Mariana represents a group of about 1,000 folks in Lawrence. I'd be interested to hear some grounded role play, like just some open exploration of, okay, here's a group, they have social capital, they've done some things together. They're Dominican largely, they're in an urban sort of declining city, town. Where do you begin with a group like that?
I mean,
Is that okay?
That's why I'm here.
In some respects, like when we split up just now, like our role play, I mean, I was picturing you when you were representing the CDC, because it was 1,000 members, so it was the beginning of that, like we started to, so you have 1,000 members and you're CDC and you're doing housing and this and that, what next? So I feel like we started to do that, but it was slow going for a while. Like you were feeding us a little bit, but it was tough.
I mean, along the same lines, I feel like we have this case study in the process of happening, which is this project that a number of us are doing with this Mattapan CDC, that they have this vision of a youth collaborative. And so I know for the coming sessions, I think having some stuff, in general, what your experience has been working, seeing youth collaboratives happen and work well, or not so well, and then almost use either through role play or just through discussions how we can think about working with this client over the next 2 months and coming up with a business plan for them, and what are the questions we should be asking and thinking about. So that was why today's role play was helpful, but also we can make it very practical by using the example we're working with now.
And there's a couple ways we can do it, or we could do it in several ways. So we can choose or do them all, but we can play the consultant, we can play the client. We're trying to mix up different ways. We can have Mariana play the client, be the client. We can all be the consulting group. You can send us out some things in advance, that we could all read about. And then we could even have
the Mattapan one also.
And the Mattapan too. I find that this, I ran for 5 years a cooperative development training program for co-op development specialists, and we put together three-day sessions. And people came together from across the country who were doing co-op development, to try to figure out how to do this. And it was mostly story-based. It was people bringing their own projects, people hearing case studies from other projects, and it's, the handout has a lot of kind of generic information in it, but for me it doesn't come alive until you've got stories, until you kind of practice. It's like, how do you know whether a business model might be feasible? It's like there's a whole lot of, you have to hear a lot of stories about a lot of feasibility studies that didn't work and the ones that did, and you develop an intuitive understanding of that. But it's not without, so we don't have time for a lot of stories. So I'm trying to give you a mix of stories, of true stories, of projects that have happened, that have worked, and we can do these possible future stories. But what would you prefer? Would you prefer to be more the client or more the consultant trying to figure it out? Would you like to see how we would do it as the co-op development specialist? Would you like to watch more of that?
The second one, the one that we did today, to reverse the roles, and then maybe try it again in the third one with us as the consultants, because I think we were just sort of trying to read the thing, and he was feeding us a lot, and it was good, and I learned a lot through it, but maybe it would be a little bit more productive to flip it first.
I think so, also, because some folks here have a lot of knowledge of the local Lawrence community and so forth, and you could really press them to think hard about how to use that knowledge. That would be real productive, and also be good to have on film.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Good. Good. Well, I would love to do that if you're up for that. And who could get the stuff on the Mattapan?
Just a little one page, just essential, some of the key essential factors that in both of those circumstances, and we can figure out how we can work this out.
And how about the PowerPoint presentation kind of lecture things? You want any more of that? You want less of that?
I thought that yesterday was really helpful as an overview to ground us. And I think, I know Jerome's interested in the legal structure, so I'm glad we're holding off on that. And so
I think the legal structure one, I don't know of another way to do it besides lecture.
Yeah. I think it's very important.
It's a real key to understanding, and very few lawyers have that information, so it's good to bring it to them, to have some idea how you can do that here in the U.S.
I think at the very end there, Jerome raised a question about scale.
Yes.
And that's actually the same question I'm getting a lot from unions every time I raise this issue. And so it would be nice to hear just some thinking. You mentioned it with Madrigal, but just some thinking about how large organizations might be able to approach this, and how it might be a little different. Maybe or maybe not, but that's a question.
I think for me, it's all the same process.
And connected to that, the linking, the networks and regional and state, and to me, that's part of the scale question. Is how do these linkages, what do they look like, and how do they then dictate the structure from that? It's like the policy or the legal structure, can it go both ways? That forming those networks then influences essentially policy or the structure or the state laws and things like that.
Yeah.
How's the mix of participation listening been? Is it okay?
I just feel like you guys have so much information, and we can only get so much, but there's obviously a lot more there. So
my feeling is if we just talk to you about it, it's not until you try to use this stuff that you get it. It's like if we just told you all that we did, you'd say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." And you walk out of here, and it's like it's surprisingly common sense and simple on one level. And it looks kind of self-obvious if you're just listening to someone talk. But as soon as you're trying to do the same thing, it's like the whole ground falls out. So we're not at all surprised that the role plays were hard. We knew they would be, and we don't know another way to do it, you know. So I really appreciate your willingness, and on camera, you know, this is a big deal. Your willingness to really like risk and try to figure it out, and because I do think it will reap great benefits back to you, but it is a little bit hard to do.
It's like exercising a muscle you haven't used yet. It gets easier as it goes along. But we'll fill some things in the next one. I think will help a lot.
Sounds good. And Mariana, the next subject is, and for the Mattapan, the next 2 sessions are around membership development, governance, and then sustaining these businesses. So you might want to think about that any information that you can share with us about what already exists. If there, in Mattapan, I bet there isn't anything yet. But I'll bet you have a lot already in place in Lawrence. So, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really, really good.
Thank you all.